kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
A ní wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be jazz. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. I'm no kwa, Osinachi. One lemon, Osinachi. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Mama, Osinachi.
A ní wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be jazz. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. I'm no kwa, Osinachi. One lemon, Osinachi. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Mama, Osinachi.
kéré o wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be jazz. I'm watching. Daily Osinachi, Namnukwa, Osinachi. One man, Osinachi, I'm watching. Daily Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, just maybe drop a hi in this comment section. Okay, okay. So we are waiting for, okay, thank you, welcome. We are waiting for the other panelists to join. Okay, so, okay. All right, so I think we just have to wait a bit because I'm the only one here now. We are about 5, so please bear with us. I'm sure they are probably having internet issues. So yeah, please just wait for us. Thank you. Okay, I guess everyone is getting in, so we may start soon if the chair is in, I guess. Okay.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Okay, thank you. Please kindly hold on for 2 more minutes for the share to come in. Then after which,
Dr. Bolu, you are the chair, right?
No.
No, I'm not.
No?
Dr. Ajala is the chair. Please kindly just have some
Okay,
patience.
well,
Then
welcome.
Professor
We're
Said
waiting
will
for the
share the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
But I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
Okay. My mic is on mute. Can somebody else hear me? Can anybody else hear me? Can you hear me now?
It's my fault. Sorry. We may, okay, let me check for the program again. Okay. Maybe we'll wait till another 5 minutes and then we can. Oh, okay. Good afternoon, Professor. I didn't.
Greetings, everyone. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yeah, so Professor Aderemi Ajala is expected to chair this panel, and we're still waiting for him. It's now 5 minutes after, and as contained in the regulation for the panel, once the panel chair does not arrive in 5 minutes, we look for an alternative because we don't have time. So my name is Said Aderito. I teach actually I don't have an affiliation right now. I resigned from Western Carolina University and I've not started my job at FIU anyway. So it's my pleasure to welcome everyone to this promising seminar on postdoctoral fellowship. Every year, the LSA has done this to provide opportunity for Nigeria-based scholars who are seeking postdoctoral opportunities outside the country, opportunities for them to do research, opportunity for them to write, and opportunity for them to connect to fellow intellectuals across the world. It's very challenging. One of the most interesting things that shape doctoral research is the opportunity to actually go out of the country after PhD to fine-tune the doctoral thesis. And many scholars have argued that the true test of a PhD is not actually the thesis itself, but the quality of revision and what the thesis is capable of doing after completion. And that is why postdoctoral fellowship and networking is very significant, not only to enhance the quality of doctoral thesis, but also to help a scholar transform from a basic learner into a sophisticated thinker and a distinguished writer. So I would not like to spend too much time introducing this session. The description is there. I would just like to call on the panelists one at a time. The way this panel is structured is for us to respond to a couple of questions one at a time in 2-3 minutes. And I think the first question in the program is how did you get to know about this fellowship? And then you can just describe that. I think based on we're going to follow the order in the program, and I think Dr. Bernard will be the first to speak, and for like 3 minutes and so it's not just about the fellowship that you have won. It's also about where do you think scholars should go in seeking opportunities about fellowship advertisement and others. Then we go. Sorry, Dr. Bernard Bulu and Dr. Obiani. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you, Professor Aderito, for inviting me to this panel. Thank you so much. And I welcome everyone. Yeah, I see Ngozi. Hi. And yeah. So how did I hear about the fellowship that I've gotten? Well, word of mouth, one. Two, I'm social media, really. Social media we are in 2022. Social media has been very, very helpful. WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, and Telegram also. Yes, we also get Telegram. So it's a lot word of mouth. You get from word of, like I said, word of mouth is very important, because for this particular one that's listed under my name at the University of Michigan, it was through word of mouth that I got it. So someone already gotten a fellowship at University of Michigan, not this exact one, but told me about this one that I got. So then I applied. So it was from word of mouth that I got this particular one that is listed under my name. So that was how I heard about the fellowship. Thank you.
I suppose I'm next.
Yeah, please, Dr. Boduajo. So before you continue, I would like to welcome Dr. Olisa Mujama to the session. Dr. Mujama, you've not missed anything. We just started. We've not actually done much. We're just still, where we are is, yeah. So where we are is how you got to know about the fellowship. Is it through word of mouth or advertisement, or you belong to certain networks that allowed you to apply and get the fellowship? That's where we are. So I will return to Dr. Eniola Boluaduro to go ahead and provide our own response.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to share one's experiences on a great platform like this. So I think I heard about the fellowship. Okay, first of all, I think I should just mention that the Georg Foster Postdoctoral Research Fellowship funds fellows to conduct research in Germany. So at the moment, I'm at the University of Munster, conducting research on doctor-patient interaction. So I heard about the fellowship from professional networks, really. I have colleagues, mostly senior colleagues, people who are more advanced than me with regards to research efforts. And so I had a couple of them who had applied for this particular fellowship before. So, I sought their counsel on, what this fellowship, what is it about? What are the, what are the opportunities that one can, how can a fellowship benefit one as a professional or as an academic? So I haven't got this information from them. I then proceeded to apply for the fellowship. So I think in my case, the professional networks that I've built over time helped me to learn about the fellowship. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I think I should be the next. Thank you, Prof, for this opportunity. Applying for fellowship is not something that is easy, especially with the kind of mentorship we have down here. So most of the ones I had, when I got to know that something was actually missing in the mentorship system we have here, I decided to start building my own clout in a little way. And apart from that, I started reaching out to people who I think are good academics. They are not in my department. They are not in my faculty. So I reached out to them. And they themselves, I told them, look, this is what I'm doing. And they themselves, when they see that actually this is a serious person, a serious academic, when they see some of this course, they will actually send it to you. So like Dr. Bernard mentioned, some of them I got through word of mouth. Some were posted, some of the former fellows, like the Leventis, was posted in our faculty platform. And then I took the opportunity, I applied, and fortunately, I got it. There are other postdoctoral I got through, maybe I saw it, I was like, are you sure I can handle it? But at least one of my colleagues, one or two, will come and prompt you and say, you are very qualified, why don't you try this? And in such way, I succeeded. And again, some of these, my mentees, some of them are already here. They will see some of these calls because they know your area. They will actually say, oh, doc, please, I think this is suitable for you. You can also try it out. So in this way, it's kind of network. the network doesn't need to be from the upper rank or echelon, but from all angles, even from your mentees, they see all these things and they can actually tell you, I think this fits your area of research interest. You can try it out and then see if you can fit in properly. So these are the ways I actually got to know some of the fellowship I've applied. The ones I've failed, thousands of them have failed, and the few of them I was able to clinch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Obiani. And I like the last sentence. Thousands of them have failed, but a few. I mean, that's really very brilliant and inspiring to know that it's not when you grow that you reach the sky. It takes a while. So the next speaker is Dr. Olisa Mujama. And we actually, at this point, Dr. Mujama, we're talking about how did you get to know about the fellowship?
Well, thank you, Professor Aderinto, for giving me this opportunity to share my experience with other scholars concerning postdoctoral fellowship application. I hope I'm audible enough. Can you confirm that? Okay, yeah, and let me start by apologizing for joining late. You know, there is a kind of time difference. As I told you, I'm currently at the National Archives, Public Records and Archives Administrations Department in Accra. So there is 1 hour difference between Accra and Nigeria. That's why it appeared I joined late. But with regard to the question you have posed, I mean, we are now in a global world as a result of the revolution in digital technology that has created global citizenship in terms of cyberspace. What has been described by Thomas Friedman as global flat world. So most of the pieces of information we generate and we derive comes from the cyberspace. And let me inform you that I was able to identify or to come about the fellowship of the Munich Center for Global History at LMU online through HNet. But let us not also discredit the fact that we also generate information about fellowships on LSA platform. Lagos Studies Association has a platform that always advertises information concerning fellowships and also workshops and conferences. So we do not have to discredit that, and we should not also play it down. So I generate my information concerning fellowships, conferences, and workshops from HNet, from After School Africa, and also LSA platforms. So these are places from which I can identify information on fellowships. And that's how I came about the fellowship of the Munich Center for Global History.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mujama, for your nice input, and of course for also telling us that you also get some of the information from the LSA platform. That's good to hear. So the next point is going to be the process of writing your proposal. Now, we hear so many things about fellowship proposal writing. Some of them a lot of myths, some of them a lot of realities. So is it that you get proposals from those who have won it in the past? Is it one size fits all? How did you compose your proposal? So if you don't mind, in 3 minutes, each of the panelists will respond to how they compose their proposal. And I think it's actually a much more important question. I think we can spend about 5 minutes on that question. Really very important on the process of writing and rewriting and writing. And another point is that if you have applied for the fellowship before and you did not get it, you can also let us know if you got some feedback and how you revised, and at what point in time did you get it, how many trials, if it's the first time or second time. Thank you.
Yeah, can I go ahead with this question? Do I answer it, Professor Aderinto?
Yeah, Dr. Mujama, I think we're going to start all over again from how we started. So okay. It's going to be Dr. Bernard again, and we move that way, and later we can move all the way from Dr. Mujama all the way back. So that way we can have kind of a seamless conversation.
All right, again, thank you for letting me do this. Okay, so how do I go about structuring my proposal? Well, maybe I should start from I've tried many times. I mean, I can't count how many. If I open a file for my rejections, yeah, it is, no, I can't, I don't even know how many. So I think what happened was when I tried so much and I was not getting any, what I did was to approach a colleague who has won, but who is not too far away from me, like not a professor, but like a peer who has gotten a couple of fellowships. So what I did was to ask for is winning proposal. Okay, so how is your proposal structured? That was what I did, and that I think that was in 2019, 18-ish. I did that, and it helped me to structure my proposal for this particular one that is listed for me that I got. And what I did was to know, I learned how to structure proposal from his winning proposal. So it's different for everybody, but that was what I did. And it was not after I had learned how to structure that I got them. No, I did not get them immediately, of course. So, but what it helped me was I knew what I was doing wrong at that time, what I needed to have that I didn't have. So his proposal helped me include some of those into my proposal writing. So I did that. And I'm not sure we are going to even talk about how do you get ideas for research, because that's even like different for everybody. I'm Yoruba studies. I teach Yoruba language and literature at Toba University. So my own kind of data space is quite different from, I'm sure, everyone on the panel. So that was how I did. And most times after, I wrote so many. I can remember very well, I think I wrote to Bayret Academy. I wrote, it was a lot, and I would not get them. Okay, so then it goes back to titling as well, title of my research. So what I did was, maybe it maybe not work for everybody, but I changed my title a bit. I adjusted my title for that particular research. And I think it was the title that actually maybe captivating, because every time I try to present something from that proposal, people are always fascinated because of the title. So I think title should also be considered when you're writing a proposal. So for me, I got the structure from a friend, a peer who has gotten fellowships. That was how I was able to structure my fellowship. And yes, we apply for 1,000,001 before you get one. So it's continuous working, reworking, and when I get feedbacks, I will work on them. Then I'll give to professors, to different professors. So I give because I have a background in Yoruba language and literature, which was the language I used to write my thesis. So I always make sure that I run my thesis by a language specialist, an English language specialist, someone who has degrees in English, to check for my grammar, I always do that. I never send anything out without giving to an English scholar to look through. So I will check for grammar. So I have people that I actually send that to. Then I have for structure. People actually can tell you the deficiencies in your structure, in your methodology. So I have different levels of, people that I give proposals to read, to review for me. So I don't just write and submit. That's, I think, one of the problems that we have. Deadline is tomorrow. You are writing a new proposal today. You want to meet tomorrow, and then you submit it. Unless you are a genius, I'm not sure. Even a genius would not push that. Very boundary. So we just keep trying and keep improving, keep revising, keep reworking. Do it. It may take 2 years. I have research. Proposals that took 2 years before I got a fellowship from them. So it's just continuous. It has to be continuous and persistent. So thank you. You need to unmute.
Sorry about that. I completely forgot that I was still muted. Can you hear me now? So in my own case, I also applied for a number of fellowships and I was rejected before I then won 2 other fellowships afterwards. The fellowship with the AFOX was my first fellowship. And then the AVH, the Alexander von Humboldt fellowship is the second one that I'm currently on. The few times, I wouldn't even say few times, the many times that I have been rejected, Of course, I always had this question in my mind that what is it that others are doing differently that I am not doing? Because I consider myself intelligent enough, I dare to say. I consider my work as having a very unique niche, so I was always curious, what are people doing that I'm not doing? So I think what Dr. Bernard said is very important. It's very important to look at the winning proposal, which I also did. But aside from that, I remember that I was speaking with a colleague at the time, and she said, oh, don't you know that writing proposals is like a trick? And I said, what do you mean by it's like a trick? He said, well, each granting body, have their own specifications. They have their requirements. They have the kinds of project they want to fund. That is not to say that you are going to abandon where your own research area is, but there is so I think it's all about framing. How do you frame your idea in such a way that the panel, the reviewing panels, those are going to review your proposals, are going to understand it enough, and it's going to be very captivating for them. I understood very quickly that if I'm going to win grants outside of my country, I have to focus on my work as an Africanist and really, project that, because there's an influx of information out there in the West. So you don't want to regurgitate what they're already familiar with. So how do I really show that the kind of data I'm bringing and the way in which I want to interpret that data be very interesting for them, to read. So after having gone through several winning proposals and sitting back and locking myself in a room and trying to see, okay, given that all of these people have written this way, how can I write my own to pass the same message? I like to point out that getting a winning proposal does not mean that I should copy and paste what other people have written. Some of us, I don't know, you might fall into that temptation, but really, your work is very unique to you. And it's your uniqueness that these granting bodies will see. They also see several proposals on a daily basis, or maybe every time they receive applications. So it's very easy to know what is unique and what is not unique. So in the case of the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation, the Georg Foster, actually, I went to their website and tried to understand what kind of project do they want to fund, and what are their, so to speak, catchment areas. So having understood that they are really focused on developing countries, then I knew that issues of developing countries would be very interesting for them. And what is more interesting than medical interactions anyway, and how we can improve it. So I knew that my idea could sell, and then I went on to start applying. Then I realized that apart from writing proposals that are geared toward developmental oriented ideas, I wanted to see, okay, how many pages do they require? What is their requirement in terms of pagination? AVH wanted us to write only 5 pages and not even a word more than 5 pages. And this is very important structure-wise. So I made sure I adhere to that. Titling also, Dr. Mina spoke about titling, is very title, I don't know, the title, I have written several hundreds of titles. I would tear it and write it again and tear it and write it. You have to self-critique yourself. You have to look at your work and ask yourself, if I'm one of the people who award this fellowship, would I even look at this proposal a second time? Would I do that? So it's very important to title properly. I think one thing that always stood at the back of my mind was the fact that most people who are going to review your work are not in your area of specialization. So this for me was a very serious bone of contention. I have a lot of technical terms in my proposal. Like, I work with conversational analysis, and that's the method I use to analyze my data. So somebody who is maybe, I don't know, different kind of profession, engineer or what have you, or in the core sciences, how do I communicate words like turn taking, sequences, action designs? They are very specific, very specific terminology to my own research. So the way I dealt with this was to then send my proposals to colleagues, both within and outside the country, to check not only for the grammar and structure, but also check the content, try to say, how can I simplify these technical terms in a way that it will be appreciable, to be easily understandable, even amongst scholars who are not in my own field. And they helped me a lot with that. They gave me ideas. Instead of saying, why don't you say, oh, how is the interaction taking place? They helped me to structure, to rephrase words, and, just to make the language sophisticated, but not too high-reaching, if you know what I mean. If you look to my proposal, the first thing that would strike you is that it's very simple. So you cannot take away the place of simplicity. It has to be elegant or simple. If it's too, how would I put it, too bookish, too specific to your discipline, such that it can't reach everyone, there would be a problem. I think those ways of writing should be reserved for paper writing, where you are addressing a very specific audience. So these are things that I made sure I did. So it's very important for other people to read your work. I didn't give myself the liberty to share my proposals the first time around because I was too confident. But when I saw that, no, this was not a matter of confidence. You have to make sure that other people brief on your work and peer review your work. So this was a strength area for me. The ABH proposal, at least 6 professors read it, both within and outside the country. I don't see how 6 professors who are in your field and who are also not in your field will read your work. I don't know how that kind of proposal will feel, except if God doesn't want it to be that way. So I think these are things that I did that really helped, to structure the work very well, very properly. Yeah, so thank you very much.
I think Dr. Bernard and Eniola, can you hear me? They've actually said a lot of things about this issue. The only thing why I want to add with what Eniola said is that one thing I've learned is that your high sounding words cannot help you. Keep your language as simple as possible. Anything you are writing and at the first look, whoever is reading it cannot understand what you are saying at that first reading, then that is not actually an academic paper. So in my own case, I failed AHP twice. Then I used my PhD, called that something from my PhD, and I was writing on this conflict. I'm writing on Biafra, conflict. But when you look at it, you find out that AHP, there's something they actually need. It must be humanistic. They don't want it to be advocacy. It's good that this is happening, but this is not actually what they want. At the point, I changed my tactics. After I've met my colleague who he has won AHP twice, both at doctoral level and postdoctoral level. I met him and he said, these people, they don't need advocacy. Read it. I will read it again. I read it and I read it and I read it again. And I found out that actually what they want something that is humanistic in nature. And I changed my tactics. I have this work, this research I've done like 5 years ago. I dumped it and picked my PhD work. I continued with my PhD. I now had to go back to that work on gender and sexuality. And then the first day that my colleague, we had a kind of session looking at our proposals, he actually embarrassed me in the public. He said that, look, this thing cannot go. You failed this thing like twice and you are not writing. This is not humanistic. It's not. That day, I was like, I looked at that, my friend, I was like, but we are friends. Why is he embarrassing me in this way? But actually, he wanted me to get it right this time around. So that day, my experience was, before I left from my office to my home, I stopped twice along the road. I have a paper, I have a pen. I'll stop. Once that idea occurs, I will just jot it down. By the time I came home and then all of us, we looked at it, I got a good title. And then that particular application gave me the AHP fellowship. But when it comes to Leventis fellowship, as my PhD work is on Biafra, the people's experiences. I want to look at it from the under, not the up. And then I started with, it's like a story. I just told a story. I just say that when I was born after the war, 10 years after the war, and then look at what has been happening, and then I just followed the sequence. It was just like I was just telling my own story, and then look at what I've experienced, look at what my parents have experienced, my experience during my PhD field work. And then at the end of the day, I now specify, look at this is where I want to look into further. But in all these things, if your methodology is not clean, nobody will give you money for an unclear method of collecting data or analyzing that data. Your methodology must be clean. You must specify how you are going to get the data. And the feasibility of whatever you are projecting is not, you don't make it bogus. Nobody is interested. You, as a researcher, there is a methodology I may look at and I say, this is not feasible. How can this person? You have to actually tell the people, this is how I'm going to collect my data. And then if there are anything you envisage, maybe hitches or anything, you can as well open up those bits. So your methodology must be clean. And apart from that methodology, even your timeline should be feasible. People, we are all human. We know what we can do and what we cannot do. So all these things are what you have to actually look into. And apart from that, you really need a second eye. Dr. Bernard mentioned it, Dr. Niola mentioned it, second, third, fourth, even fifth eye. You really need these people to look at it. Because you might write something and you may be feeling like you may be boogieing it, that you have done a strong proposal. But the thing there is that by the time a second person may look at it, the person will find out the flaws in it. And don't get shied away. Don't feel offended like the way Chid, my friend, was like, you see, you are writing nonsense in the public in public. You look at this, but that thing actually helped me in my proposal. Another thing you should know is this: writing proposal is not as easy. We are just, sometimes you do these things and then maybe we try our best and God willing, a bit of luck, we get it. But 2018 to 2019 was my worst years, in the sense that my rejection comes on a weekly basis. I nearly gave up. 2018, I will never forget, though, 2019. I nearly gave up hope. I thought I would never get it right. I will look at people and I will be wondering, how do they do it? I requested for people's proposal, which is very important. All of us, we've mentioned it. And again, apart from that, these kind of sessions, we thank God for the gift of LSA. At least everywhere we got to hear about these things. This kind of sessions, don't ever miss an opportunity to learn. Don't miss it, because it is here that you learn a lot. Another one, we have another one that is organized. Dr. Bernard is aware of that one. IFE Institute of Advanced Studies. So in this way, if you see the call, always try to learn from others that have done it. And in this way, you will learn. And you equally meet mentors. Professor Sahid is always, I've disturbed him too. He's always even ready to offer his own advice. Take this opportunity. Don't be afraid. Let it be that the person refused to help you. But in all, sometimes you can actually bring in, your experiences can form part of that, your proposal. As Dr. Niola mentioned, don't tell them what they know. Tell them what they don't know. So we are taking our own story to them. And in this way, they may get interested. And remember to look for a language editor, because without it, you may have a beautiful proposal, but it's not in the right language. Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Obi Anin. So I will now hand over the role of the chair to Dr. Ademide Adelusi. As I said earlier, Professor Aderemi is not here. That's why I took over. So Dr. Adelusi will take over as the chair of the panel. And then, so let's invite Dr. Mujama to provide this reflection. Thank you.
You're muted.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Aderito, for inviting muted. Can you hear me now? Am I still
Yes.
muted?
We can hear you now. I can.
Hello. Can you? Okay, thank you. Yeah, I want to appreciate the previous speakers for making important revelations concerning the procedures for preparing proposals for fellowships. And I wouldn't want to repeat what they have said. In that case, I will trend my presentations towards fellowship and also the framings of the proposal. I said this in terms of saying that every fellowship has scopes and also coverage, and we must be very conversant with the scope and coverage of fellowship before we start writing proposal. And when we say being conversant with the scope and coverage of the fellowship, it is not about the title itself, because if you are working maybe on something that is not global and you want to apply to a fellowship that is calling for global history, I mean, there is no way that proposal will actually be successful. Then hands-on component is also important. If you have ab initio not been working on global history, because your CV must be submitted, more often than not, they will require you to submit maybe a 5-page or maybe 2-page CV to know the area in which you have been working over time. Because no institution will want to give you the fund to go and begin to learn how to write in one area of study. You must have demonstrated the capacity to have been working in that area before you will be able to apply and for your application to be successful. For instance, if you are making application to a fellowship that has to do with global history, you must make sure you are working in the area of global migration, colonial and post-colonial history, global integration and disintegration, and also global conflicts, such as First World War. Maybe you are working in something that is local and you want to apply to a fellowship calling for global history. I think there is a problem with regard to that. So what we should first bear in mind is the scope and coverage of the fellowship before we begin to make application. And this has 2 dimensions: scope of the proposal itself, and then our CV, whether we have been working and publishing in that area of study. Now, the second direction towards which my intervention will be trended has to do with writing proposal itself, because more often than not, you have to summarize your proposal in 1 or 2 pages. Yes, not every fellowship will give you the leverage to write in 5 pages. For instance, with regard to the Munich Center for Global History, you are expected to communicate your views or to write your proposal in 1 or 2 pages. In that case, how are you going to frame your proposal to capture the fundamental issues required to win that fellowship? I think the first thing you have to do is to demonstrate capacity to understand the state of knowledge in that area of study. What has been known in the area in which you are proposing to work? And in what ways are you going to extend that body of knowledge? What are you bringing to the table? And how do you want to do that? That is calling for the methodological issues. In that case, you have to state the body of knowledge, what is already known, that is the state of literature, and then objective, how do you want to extend the existing literature, and then how the methodology you want to use in doing that. When you are able to capture these main issues in 2 pages, coupled with the timeline of how you want to carry out the research, that will be able to actually fetch you the fellowship. And finally, you have to look at the language, which is very important. The language, the framing of that proposal itself, because there are some languages that appear offensive to the reviewers. I will use myself as a case study to demonstrate how language can create a problem. You know, because initial Institute for Advanced Studies in the Humanities, University of Alliance Ruhr, UAR, at Essen in Germany, because my work has to do with German history. But unfortunately, I didn't get it because of the language. And I came back to engage in review. What have I done wrong that made me not to get this fellowship, so that I would correct myself in order to apply for the Munich Center for Global History? And what do I mean by language? Well, let me inform you that the proposal that got me the fellowship did not emanate from my PhD. It's as a result of reinvention, because I will credit this to Professor Derrington. On one occasion, we were having conversation, I think 1 or 2 years after my PhD, and he reminded me that, oh boy, 5 years after your PhD, you have to tell us a new story. Yes. And I defended my PhD in 2013. In 2018, I published a monograph from my PhD, and I felt it was time to move on, to tell a new story, to reinvent myself, what in Germany they will refer to as rehabilitation. Then I had to go back to the archives to look for a new story to tell. And I didn't want to move away from my area of study, characterized by global history, because initially I was working in the international economy, from deglobalized to globalized capitalism, using Nigeria cocoa exports as a case to demonstrate how the third world countries were integrated and incorporated into the orbit of global capitalism. So ab initio, I had been working within the area of global history. And then I went back to the archives. I didn't want to deviate from global history. I went back to DCI, Department of Commerce and Industry, as well as the simple list of foreign affairs. And one important topic became predominant and also recurring decimal, namely trading with the enemy. Upon critical investigation, I came to the realization that it had to do with the international laws of war on how enemy subjects and properties were treated during the First and Second World War. And then I picked it up and started researching into it. So the first proposal I wrote actually was enemy subjects and properties in colonial West Africa during the Second World War. And I was referring to Germans because they were the enemies. You know, Nigeria, Ghana, and British West Africa was under Britain, which was a belligerent country against Germany. And when you see enemy subjects in British documents regarding First and Second World Wars, they were referring to Germans. So when I was writing to Germans, I was also referring to them as enemy, which was actually offensive. So when I applied for the first time to UAR and I didn't get it, I began to think, what might have given rise to the failure? And I realized that it was possible. I was referring to them as enemy, and therefore it could be offensive. I then changed the topic to mention their name, German subjects and properties in colonial West Africa during the Second World War. And when they had their name, German subjects and property, I guess they became happier rather than referring to them as the enemy. And that's how I won the fellowship. So what I'm saying in essence is that we must be very careful about the language of framing, because sometimes the language we use in framing our proposal could be offensive to the reviewers. In as much as your proposal might be fantastic, but because of that offensive language, you might not be able to make any headway. Now, finally, somebody wrote on the communication or chat that we should tell them at what point one should stop applying for postdoctoral fellowship. It depends on the institution. Some institutions will tell you that after 5 years, you are not eligible to apply for postdoctoral fellowship. Some institutions will tell you after 8 years, you are no longer eligible to apply for postdoctoral fellowship. So we may say that between 5 and 8 years after your PhD, you may no longer be regarded as postdoc. You may begin to be referred to as senior scholar. And that is where competition is stiffer. And that is why it is necessary for every individual at the point of PhD defense to, after 5 years of defense, you are expected to create important marks, okay, on the sand of academia, so as to enable you to compete effectively when you go to the senior level of competition. I think let me stop at this point to give room for other speakers.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Mujama. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ademide Adelusi Adeluni. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, very good. So I'm stepping in as the chair. Our next question, so thank you, of course, for all your really excellent and generous responses so far. Our next question is, what was the role of networking and professional development in your success? And what advice would you have for people who are still trying to be where you are? So we'll start with Dr. Bernard.
Okay, well, thank you again. Well, what is the role of networking? Let me refer to something that I saw on Google Scholar. I always see on Google Scholar, I think it's standing on the shoulder of giants, yeah? So let me start from there. That is if people have passed a particular, if people have made a particular part for you, I've gone through a particular part, it's easier for you to ask them how to navigate that part. So I think if you ask them, you can actually navigate it easier than they did, or they like better than they had. So I would say networking is very, very important. How do you network? Now, we've been in Nigeria, we've been on strike for the past, I don't know, because my own university, we started our own earlier than the national strike. So I think we started around January. So we've been on strike for like half of this year completely. And how have you been using the 6 months? Okay, workshops, conferences, seminars. Have you contacted anyone just to see how, I mean, no, if you don't attend conferences and workshops, seminars and all that, you can't network. One. Two, you won't know what is the emerging studies in your area. You won't know what is happening. You won't even know, like you would not know. So networking, you get it through seminars, workshops, and conferences. And that's how that's how you know what is happening. And that's how people know about your own research. Because when you give presentations, which I am sure is always scary. I mean, I've given a couple of them. And I think no matter how many times you have to speak in front of people, you have to drink water. Like no matter what you think you know, the fact that you have seasoned professors listening in, if it's via Zoom, you lose your nerves. It's just like, oh, I think they are going to kill me, or they're going to say, I'm going to say something stupid. It never goes away. And if that scares you enough for you to not put yourself out there, no one will know about your research. You are not going to learn any new thing, and you will continue to have that fear, which will never go away because you're not confronting it. So I think for me, networking is through those means, and of course, social interactions. And I'm not a social person, but social interaction is very, very important. I don't know, but I find a way to navigate that social reality, even though I don't go out, but I still try to, like, Ngozi and I won AVH, age 11 in this, we're in the same cohort. Now, how did I know Ngozi? Not when we didn't even go to London at the same time. We went at different times, but immediately we won it, I reached out to Ngozi. Hi, it's me. Yeah, you may have seen my name. And that's how we met. We've never met. We've never seen physically. We've never been in the same space at the same time before. But we have connected, we have interacted, we have shared ideas, we have shared proposals, we have a lot of things. A lot of things. You would think we've met before. We have never met before, because at the time we're supposed to be together, I was doing another fellowship. So when she traveled to London, I was in the US. So by the time I came to London, she had left. But that's how you network. So I know what she's doing. She knows what I'm doing. That's how you network. So when there is something that is, there's a conference, there are fellowships opportunities that will align with my area of research, which is gender and sexuality, environmental studies and all, she will tell me. And when I see something, I'm like, Ngozi, you should see this. So maybe you have interest. That's how for me, that's how you network. And then you have to network within your own level. Ngozi and I, we are in the same level. And then there are the professor, the experienced scholars level. You have to network there because they are the giants. You sit on their shoulders. They, like one of my professors would say, you can make them like your research assistant because they've been there. They have the idea. So they can point to you in the right direction. You don't have to keep going around the bush. They can just say, go there. It makes it easier. It makes your work faster. It makes it easier on you. And then you meet more people on the way. And then for those ones, you get other informations that can actually lead to better research. So that's, I don't have, and then there's social media. Okay. Twitter, if you are not on Twitter, be on Twitter. For Pete's sake, be on Twitter. Be on Facebook. I follow every university that I know on Twitter. And when they post it, because unfortunately for us, they post things on Twitter more than they do on Facebook. So if you are following, say, Oxford on Twitter, if Oxford posts anything, you will get a notification and you would know to apply or to attend. I attend things not because they are related to my field, but just because, let me go there, no knowledge is lost. That's how you network. And when you present, like I said, people will know about your work. He was doing one of my presentation at SOAS. Ngozi can bear me witness. When after the presentation, which was, my voice was shaking throughout, I had cough. It was cold. It was not really bad, but it was mostly nerves. But at the end of the presentation that I thought was okay, or may have gone poor, my mind, I'm like, kill me now. I may have been maybe my voice was shaky and all that. A university in Israel contacted the center that I was in, which was SOAS at the University of London, sent me an email to come and present in Israel for something that I thought was messy. Okay, put yourself out there, put your research out, let people listen in. You get feedbacks, you get new ideas, better. That's how you just make better whatever you are doing. It takes time. It takes a lot of it. It takes practice. Okay. Practice does not make perfect in my own field. In my own mind. Practice makes better. you keep getting better. You can't perfect it. If you perfect it, then let us go and sleep. Work is done. But you can't perfect.
Thank you so much.
Make it better. So that's what I see from my area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Bernard. Okay, next we'll go to Dr. Oluwaduro to also explore this question of networking and professional development, especially in this hybrid world. And I forgot to mention that if you can limit our responses to 3 to 5 minutes so everyone can have something to say.
Okay, thank you again, my amiable chair. I think in my own case, the role of humility and restlessness can be overstated. I finished my PhD in 2018 from University of Bayreuth here in Germany. And having used conversation analysis as my methodology, for conducting research and interpreting my data, I realized that there are not so many CA scholars, so to speak, in Nigeria. We have a few, but the discipline, the research area or the method is not very well grounded yet in Nigeria. So once I got back to Nigeria, because I had to come back to my place of work, I got really restless. And I told myself, it's good to get engaged in campus politics and all of that, but I need to prioritize my work. I really need to. I don't want to, well, you know what I mean. So I told myself I need to keep putting myself out there. So what I did was to make sure that I kept up the interaction that I already had with scholars that I had met during my PhD in all the conferences I went to. I must say that during my PhD, at some point during the LSA program, I had already given a talk about how I went through the PhD without any substantial funding. But I dare say that I traveled to as many countries as I could, even as an unfunded student, because I was restless, not paranoid, but restless, really restless. Restless to know people, restless for knowledge production, restless just to be relevant in what I'm doing. So I had gone to conferences in Denmark, in US, in name it. I was just using my own fund, I didn't even get scholarship to travel. From Germany, I would go to all of these countries. I would have, conferences, I would present papers, even though my ideas were very amateur, but, very immature rather, but I would, keep on going and keep on interacting with these big names in the field. So when I got back to Nigeria, I got really restless. I said, I can't just sit down and just be going from one committee meeting to the other. So I kept up interaction. And then I also traveled. I traveled within the space of 2 years. I had gone outside the country for not less than 6 times. And one of it was on my Oxford, funding that I had gotten for 2 months to visit University of Oxford as a research fellow. So I made sure that I kept up interaction. I could just realize that, I've not been in touch with this so-and-so professor. I just pick up my laptop. I just send an email, professor, I've not heard from you in a while, or how are you doing? Even if it's just a cursory greeting, I have these ideas going through my mind. It could be a work in progress, some draft that I've written. So could you mind taking a look at this? Sometimes not even because you want them to really read it, but because you just want to keep interaction up, because you don't want to lose this network that you have. So, and I also realized that the place of humility is very important. You have to really, really be humble. If you want to network properly, there are times when you will be corrected. There are times when there will be ideas that differ from yours. You have to be humble enough to receive them and see them as constructive criticism. If people criticize your work, or how you go about interpreting some body of data, you have to be humble enough to accept it and go back to your drawing room to see, okay, how can I make myself better? So of course, we are in a hybrid world to join every association, professional association, joinable, I can use that word. Like, it's never too much. Well, I never had a Twitter account before I finished my PhD. I realized it was very important. I joined Twitter. Twitter is a very quick way to get information. You just tweet it and it's there, it's gone. And if you don't catch it on time, you've lost the information. Please just use Instagram for the right purposes. There are also, sometimes they have Instagram accounts. Most times they also have blogs. There are most of them have blogs that you can visit. So please join all the professional associations. LSA is also, I saw the AFOX call on LSA website. It was just a very random posting that Professor Aderito had posted. And I was like, oh, wow, this is a very nice one to put in for. And I got, interested in applying for it, especially because I didn't have to get a reference letter for it. Getting referees is another topic entirely. it's a pain in the neck, getting the right referees for your work. So please, just like Dr. Bernard said, put yourself out there. Do not close in. Be willing to let other people see what you are doing. I think the culture in Nigeria, we're too used to. I mean, in this day and age, in my university, you see how people whispering to talk about their proposal or their work because they don't want you to hear what they want to say. I think it's very myopic. I don't even understand it. The more you throw out your work, the more feedback you will get, and the better your work will be. So please throw yourself out there. I'll use our language. Throw yourself out there. It's very important.
I don't know if she said throw. With so much
okay. Permit me.
But no, but I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I think that's really excellent advice. I believe next we have Dr. Obiani to answer this question. Like, how do you think about networking and professional development, especially in the world we are today?
Thank you, our new chair. Dr. Bernard and Dr. Niola, they've said all there is need to say. Like, don't mind Dr. Bernard, her presentation was top notch. I really enjoyed it. And then I wanted to hear about the penny stuff, and she was like, and then there was a kind of, there was a kind of correlation from what she's saying and what is obtainable. I so much enjoyed that. I wasn't even surprised that she got a call for further lecture on that. That was nice. And then when we talk about networking, actually, me and Dr. Bernard is like we've known for ages. She's actually the one that reached out to me. And then since then, I've even connected other people from my university to her, people I thought they are doing the same thing. I would like, babe, please, can you help me look at this person's proposal, do this? And she has done that. Even this morning, I contacted her to help me look for someone that will read my monograph on gender and sexuality. But she hasn't responded anyway. So that's what you get from networking. I know nobody can do it. I said, but this lady, she's here. I think, let me ask her. She will have one or two networks that can help me. So it's good when you maintain that network. If you are not good, because in our university, people will say, okay, Dr. Obiani, she has gotten this fellowship, she has done this, and they think you have the magic wand. No, but in most cases, people will actually approach you and ask you, what do you do it? Even people from different disciplines. So what do you do is that this your network come into play. You use it equally as a medium to mentor others, in the sense that you now call one or two of them. I have a friend in music, Shegun, who is helping me he's from, I think, the same Ife too. He's helping me to read a proposal of a colleague in English who is writing on ecofeminism. So these are the things you do with your network. When you see them, when you attend all these conferences, you belong, like I will keep mentioning LSA and the Institute of Advanced Studies organized by DFE. This thing is coming up. That's where you meet people. Like now, as I have Dr. Bernard, she has also helped me to contact a professor in Michigan University to help a colleague here in Nsukka. This is what you gain from networking. And again, as Dr. Niola mentioned, people will be whispering their proposal. I've not even finished the one on my table, let alone stealing yours. I have a lot to do. So like my colleagues, I will always tell them, bring it out. Let me see if I can help you. But you see people trying to hide. Please, if you're on this platform, don't hide your proposal. The people you are sending it, unless somebody has that kind of a character. Some of them, we have a lot. We are doing it because people mentored us, and then we need to mentor others. That's why we will look at your proposal and give you feedback. Apart from that, no serious scholar will have that time, that ample opportunity to look at your work. But this is something you give back to the society. So maintaining your network, attending conferences is very, very important. I heard about LSA when I attended the Historical Society of Nigeria conference in Abuja. So one guy from another university in the West saw me. Have you heard about LSA? I said, no, I've not heard about it. He said, well, this person is here. This person belongs to, is there. I was like, but these are the people I see every day. They've never mentioned about LSA. He said, okay, go to your Facebook, look, find them. And I did. Immediately, I knew about LSA. I made sure that all my mentees, undergraduate mentees, joined LSA. Some of them are already there. I make sure they join it. And from there, they are also developing this interest in academia, or they also know one or two things to do. These are the things. If I hadn't attended that conference, maybe I wouldn't have known about this thing, about LSA. And then other things have benefited. So these are the things we know. It helps us to develop too. And it helps us to also develop others who will take the mantle, the light from us in the future. So in this way, we are building, not only that we are building that such bridge, but also those people you've mentored may also in future, they will help you in one or two things. You may ask them, they will see all these something that may benefit you, and they will quickly send it to your WhatsApp. So in this way, we keep moving. So the best thing is for us to do what? To look to maintain these networks, number one. Number two, don't shy away. Don't shy away from attending seminars, workshop, buy your data. I've spent money to travel to learn research methodology. I've traveled to Kenya to learn research methodology. That was the first loan I got from the bank to travel. So don't shy away. If you are working and you can borrow money, please go and learn. You will never regret it. And then the contacts you maintain will never be taken away from you. If you can write, you can keep in touch with them. And Dr. Niola, thank you for reminding me to send a letter to one of the professors that mentored me. I got from LSA.
You're very welcome, Doctor.
All right, thank you so much for this generous and really insightful responses. So next we'll hear from Dr. Muojama. Would you like to add something about networking?
Yeah, maybe I have to say something very briefly and also quickly. And in terms of networking, I have to approach it from two dimensions, namely pre-fellowship networking and then networking during the fellowship, because these are two different things. There is need for us to network before we are able to get the fellowship. And while on the fellowship, we should not focus attention only on our research efforts, but we should also network while engaging in that fellowship, because it is very important. Now, let me expand on these two paradigms. I can attest to the fact that networking has actually contributed to my intellectual and professional development. There is no gainsaying that fact. And my networking actually is as a result of the nature of activities in which I have engaged in the academia. I attend conferences locally and internationally. In fact, what I do is that sometimes I go online looking for conferences, but fully funded. Because you know we're in the global south, and those of us in the global south, we don't have the funding to go to conferences outside our area. So you have to look for conferences that are fully funded. And I'm happy that most of the conferences and workshops I have attended across the world were fully funded, as a result of which I was able to engage in networking across the globe, and which to a large extent has contributed to my intellectual development. I will give you 2 or 3 examples of how networking has actually contributed to my intellectual development. In 2020, for instance, I was contacted by Princeton University. I didn't know them. It was through conferences I had attended and my publications or things like that, that they came to realize that I'm working in global history. For me to help them to establish global history lab at the University of Illinois. 2020 up to today, we have a program with Princeton University in form of MOU, where our students, learn global history with other students across 30 countries of the world. It's as a result of networking. Then in 2021, I was also contacted by an editor of a Routledge Handbook on Development to co-author a chapter with a on operations. And that book is going to come out this year. Out of that conference, I was also invited by the editors of Routledge Handbook on Environmental History to co-author SOAS. Assuming I have this visibility such that I will be in my cocoon and get invitations to co-author a chapter in an important collection with scholars from other parts of the world. And then while in the fellowship, there is need for us to also engage in network in addition to carrying out our research, because there is this temptation, to focus attention on research efforts while carrying out our fellowship, simply because we go to places where we come in contact with state-of-the-art facilities, good library facilities, good equipment, which do not exist in places where we are coming from. And the danger is that if care is not taken, you will bury yourself in the library without going out to connect with people, to interact with them, and things like that. And good enough, most fellowships do not have teaching obligation. And because they don't have teaching obligation, you are going to network by attending workshops, by attending seminars, by attending conferences. The benefit of doing this is that you will get advice from professors on what you are working on, and also on things you never knew about. I give you another example. It was because of the presentation I made in one of the fora and platforms. Hello? Am I on?
Yes, you are on. I think.
I was going to say, maybe if you could do this one quickly so that we can move the next question.
Off. You are. I'm rounding off, actually. I'm rounding off. Through networking during my fellowship, I came to the realization that I have to expand the scope of my research. And that's why I'm here right now, because I was working on, I'm using Nigeria as a case to demonstrate how enemy subjects and properties were treated in colonial West Africa. The advice I got was that Nigerian case study may not be able to make forceful arguments and important contribution, that I have to cover the whole of British West Africa. And that's why I'm here now in Accra to look into the materials in the archives. From here, I will go to Fora Bay, from Fora Bay to the Gambia. If I hadn't gone out to network, I would be revolving around the Nigerian case study without understanding the limited nature of that study. But now I'm expanding it as a result of the information I got from networking. And finally, from networking, you will be able to get those that will write recommendation letters for you, because it is very important. More often than not, we find it difficult to get people to write letters of recommendation from outside our universities. But if you engage in networking, it will give you the opportunity and possibilities to have a glittering array of professors from across the world that will be willing to write reference letters for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you've now entered our next question. Now, I think this question of letters of recommendation and understanding the requirements, this is really important to consider, especially since this is outside of your own control. So can anyone share quick advice or experiences on this idea of how to select someone to write a letter of recommendation and how to manage the relationship between yours? So we can do 2 minutes each. Dr. Bernard, please.
Okay, all right, thank you. Sorry,
Hello,
can you hear me? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, because I was getting, okay. So thank you. Quickly, how do you get letter of recommendations and how do you maintain the relationship? So I always tell people that I may be wrong, but your recommendation is as important as your application. I may be wrong, but that is what I have always believed, that your recommendation letters are as important, if not more, as your application. And why did I say this? Because I've seen people write recommendation letters most times, and it will be like, she's very hardworking. Don't do that. Don't let anybody do that to you. I'm sorry, but don't do that. So that's why you have to have a relationship with this recommender or these recommenders. Now, how do you have a relationship with them? You don't have a deadline tomorrow and dump letter of recommendation on them today. You have to respect their time. Respect that they have things going on in their life apart from you. And they are not waiting for, okay, Olabumi is going to send me a letter today to write. No, They have other things going on there. So you have to give them time and be respectful of their time. Don't bombard them with emails. And then most times, these people that I use or that are my recommenders, they've seen my proposal many times. Okay, they've given me inputs, they've given me feedback. They are part of the process. So I don't just dump it, so that when they want to write, they know what they are writing. And these are people that I may have formed relationship with over the years. And like Dr. Lisa just said, you have to when you form network during fellowships, it also helps you for other fellowships. So for example, there was I've been writing a proposal for years, for like 2 years. And then I went to University of Michigan last year, and they were just sending it back to me. They would say it's good, but it's not good. We are sorry, it's good, but it's not so good. So we had this workshop where a professor was taking us every week. It was a writing workshop. So I took my proposal to her, Professor Fig. What do you think? And she's not even in my field. She's white. I mean, she's an English language specialist, and I'm a Yoruba specialist. Okay, language. So it doesn't even fit. But she read and she gave me an honest feedback. You need to rework your methodology, which I did. I deleted my methodology. I didn't even rework. I deleted it and wrote a new one because it was messy. And I submitted again and it got thrown back. But I submitted again and it got accepted to another fellowship. So, and then when I was going to need one of the recommendations for any of the fellowship, I would tell her, can you write a recommendation for me? It was easy for her to write because she's already part of the process. So you may not necessarily recycle your recommenders. You have to get new ones, build on the relationship you have before your fellowship, during your fellowship, and after your fellowship. And that's how recommendations are as good as your application. Get that, know that, and know peace. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, for the rest of the panelists, I've just been alerted that we are supposed to have a Q&A session. So I'm going to have to cut short the responses around 2:20. So for everybody else, is it possible for us to answer quickly this question of the letter of recommendations for us? So Dr. Fajro, can you respond please to this question?
Okay, I think my answer would be in 3 parts. First of all, is to state that not all postdoctoral fellowships need reference letters. I'm not sure if so many of us know this. The Africa of Oxford Initiative fellowship that I got required no reference letter. And this was a catch for me because at that time I had just returned to Nigeria and I had not built enough professional working relationships, so to speak, with a lot of the professors, back home. And I knew I needed some of them back home to write. So this is one of the reasons why I applied for the ACFOX. It was a 2-month postdoctoral fellowship and I got it. The second thing is that I think that, I might be wrong, but I think that you really need to approach scholars in the professorial cadre alone, just professors to write reference letters for you. I don't think that you cannot, at the level of postdoc, ask a doctor or somebody who has not become a professor to write a reference letter. I think it's going to really affect your application in a very negative way. I may be wrong, but that's what I think. And as Dr. Bernard said, it's very important for the reference letters to be very detailed. It cannot just be flimsy sentences about how you look and how your hair looks. I'm being ridiculous, but you know what I mean. It has to be very detailed. It has to show that the person is very familiar with your work. He or she has known you. You have built interaction over the years. He or she needs to have understood your proposal, which is why time is very important. The person needs to have read your proposal, digested, understood what you are doing, so that it can then, write a very beautiful statement about how your work will benefit your research area as a person, develop it as a scholar, and how, the OS Institute also benefit from you. I also think that reference letters can be written by those outside your field of area of research interest. Professor Aderito has written a reference letter for me before. He's not a linguist. I'm a linguist. He's a historian. So I think you need to take that into consideration. You don't always have to approach professors who are linguists to write reference letters for you. As far as the person is a professor and he has built, his career to a very appreciable level, I think that any funding body will appreciate that. So I think that would just be my 2 cents. Yeah, your contribution.
Thank you so much for your really important and brief response. Dr. Obian, can you also give us a brief response to the level?
Okay, can you hear me? I think I'm having network problem over here. I always tell my students, if you have this intention of maybe after school, you want to go in for your master's or your PhD or even postdoctoral level, you really need to establish relationship with your lecturers. Some of your lecturers are not really, they are not really as scary as you may think. Some of us, these are trying to, they are kind of a defensive mechanism at times, but when you are serious, like someone like me, I can note people that are serious. Even by teaching them for what session, I can always know these are the kind of people we need in the academia tomorrow. So when you have this kind of relationship with them, you can recruit equally. If you are lucky, your lecturer can recruit you as a research assistant, pay you, or taking you to a field. In this way, the person is teaching you. By the time the person will write, you need a recommendation letter tomorrow, the person will have a lot of things to say. From my own experiences, I found that in most cases, after your application, the next thing, Dr. Bernard, you are very, very correct. The next thing is your recommendation letter. It matters a lot. For instance, one of our students needed a recommendation letter for a postdoctoral studies. He approached a professor that students, they normally like professors that don't usually stress them, telling them to study hard or do this. He approached a professor, and the professor, I've known this person for 4 years. He is our first class student. He is hardworking, full stop. Fortunately for him, he had the professor that recommended him wrote a serious recommendation letter. The graduate school, they called the professor, the other professor, the one that recommended him, and say, who did this? If not that the other professor wrote a good recommendation, he would have lost that admission. Not that he's not intelligent, not that he can't do the research, but because of recommendation letter. Recommendation letter matters a lot. You don't just, like one of my students just called me up one day, say, I need a recommendation letter. The first thing I asked, what was your grade? She said 3rd class. Then I said, okay, what do you think I can write? We never had this relationship. And again, the result is very poor for me to actually allow her to compete. Morally, I couldn't vouch that this is a brilliant student. So it was a lot of handicap. But other of my students that some of them will say, I'm working on this, I'm going on field work. They will volunteer. They say, okay, I want to follow you to this field work. And in these cases, some of them, they've gained admission because of the kind of, you give story. I'm a storyteller. I write story. We have a history. We've worked together. We've published together. We've done this work. And again, when they see, they will see the sequence. So in my own case, my PhD supervisor, she's just too good. In fact, my recommendation letter is from 2 to 3 pages. You see her, she's very familiar with my work. Sometimes it looks like she writes even a better proposal in the work than myself. So I think most of the things I've been able to get, my PhD supervisor, she actually did a good work. It's not about writing jargon, but giving an idea. The supervisor telling a story, why this your work is good, why it needs to further studies. But anything outside that, sometimes if you impose a recommendation letter, you don't have anybody, you just tell somebody, okay, I need a recommendation letter. Some of us will be blank because most cases we don't really know so much about you or about your work.
Thank you, Dr. Obiani. I have to interrupt you here. Okay, so Dr. Muajama, can you give us a very brief response so that at least people in the audience can ask any urgent questions that they have? You already said something about recommendation letters. Do you have a few more sentences you can add? But very brief, so I don't have to interrupt.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I think what I have to emphasize is that there is need maybe for another workshop on how to write reference letter, because reference letter is very important. The person writing reference or recommendation letter for a candidate is actually doing the work of a marketer, or put differently, publicity secretary of a political party. If you do not write good recommendation letter, even when the proposal is fantastic, there is possibility for that proposal to fail as a result of the recommendation letters. So the content of recommendation letters must be actually properly addressed so as to enable people to know, because people may have good intention to recommend a particular candidate and his or her work, but the framing of that reference letter will become problematic. So the critical question we should be raising here should be the content of recommendation letter, because it goes beyond saying that the research proposal is good, that the work is, that the student is promising. There are issues which reviewers are expecting to see in a recommendation letter for them to make up their mind either to recommend or to select this particular proposal. You have to identify the capacity of that candidate to engage in independent research. Because when you are going on a fellowship or you are applying for, you are now going to do independent research without any supervision. What if the candidate does not have that capacity to engage in an independent research? If the recommendation does not emphasize it, then there is a question mark. And you have to also demonstrate, maybe in terms of grading 10, 25, where can this candidate be found? Is the candidate capable of working in a multicultural society? Because if we are going outside the country, you are going to a place where you see people from diverse backgrounds. If the candidate does not have the capacity to function in a multicultural society, then the aim of going for the fellowship may, to a large extent, be defeated. But what, because of these challenges, I think Professor Jenshal, that there are some fellowships that don't actually require recommendation. So I try as much as possible to navigate through this labyrinth, to look for fellowships that don't require recommendation. And I have come to the realization that a good number of fellowships in Germany don't actually require recommendation. The one that requires recommendation fundamentally is AVH or George Foster. They require, in fact, one or two. But other fellowships in Germany don't require recommendation. Once I see those ones, I don't hesitate to apply, because I don't have the headache of running around to look for those that will write letters of recommendation. And then when you get somebody to write letter of recommendation, you don't have control over the content. So these are the issues. Maybe we have to request, or maybe make a representation. Yeah, to LSA to organize a workshop for.
Okay, thank you.
Writing. Yeah.
So thank you so much for these really valuable contributions. Okay, folks, we're running out of time. Are there any, I'd like to invite anybody from the audience. We can take at least one or two questions. We'll maybe take them at the same time and see if anybody is willing to answer, and maybe we'll take up the recommendation for another. So folks, if you have a question from the audience, please, this is your opportunity, type it in the chat or unmute yourself and ask your question. And we'll take all the questions together. We only have 3 minutes to go.
This is the webinar format though, they can unmute themselves. I'm not sure. I don't think
so. They can request to unmute. They can request, and they can also put in the chat. Yeah, so you can either request or put it in the chat or put it in the Q&A. We already have one question. Can independent scholars who are not in academia apply for postdoc opportunities, even though they're looking forward to getting a position? And then the second question is, so we'll collect a couple of questions and continue. Can you mention any other sources of postdoctoral opportunities that you check frequently? I think that maybe maybe some people didn't get the benefit of the beginning of the conversation. So maybe we'll have one more question before we go around very quickly. Okay, so I don't see any question yet, and no one is asking to unmute. So I will say, so let me ask the panel, can you give us one website or resource you go to to look for fellowships? Everybody, one website or a source. Dr. Bernard?
All right, thank you. One, WhatsApp. I have groups on WhatsApp, academic groups, not one.
Yes.
So groups.
Okay.
So WhatsApp, join academic groups on WhatsApp. And people often share ideas. Outlets.
Very good.
Fellowships. Yes.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Dr. Buluajuro.
Yeah, I think that linguist.
One source.
I think a linguist list online is a very good platform for researchers in the field of English linguistics or linguistics generally to check for postdoctoral applications. Linguist list.
Thank you so much. And maybe what we'll do is collect this information and put it on our website as well, and social media. Dr. Obiani, is there a place you go to look for opportunities?
Number one, LSA, IAS. I encourage you, Dr. Bernard, if you've not closed for the year, please, I encourage people to attend that particular fellowship, please. If it's still possible, they share a lot of information on our Telegram platform. Apart from then HNet, as Dr. The other doctor from Accra, sorry, I've mentioned. Okay. Then another thing, somebody asked a question earlier.
We have to round up.
Hello, Chairman. Somebody asked a question. Please, somebody asked a question earlier on how did we deal with
Sorry,
rejection?
we have to round up.
Okay.
Dr. Obiani, I'm really sorry, but we have to round up. Dr. Muajama, do you have one place you can tell us so that we can round up right now? One source.
Yeah, I think she has mentioned it, HNet, and then you can also look out for After School Africa. Can you hear me?
Okay. Thank you so much. Well, we've reached the end of our time. I want to thank our panelists for being so generous with their time and their encouragement to everybody else. And thank you for everyone in the audience who patiently waited and listened so carefully. And everybody a wonderful day. And thank you all so much. I really enjoyed at least a part of the panel I was able to see. All right, folks, have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you so much.
And thank you all.
Thank
and
you
good luck continuing to rack up all your fellowships.
All right,
of course.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. Bye.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.